Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are on our fantastic planet. And welcome to our Inside the Manager Data live stream, live from a very sunny, warm September in central London. So you can't see outside, but it's nice and warm, nice and sunny. And we're delighted to be here with you. And I'm delighted that you're here with me on this live stream. Now, this is something that we run on quite a regular basis. If this is the first time that you've interacted with our live streams, then hello, my name is Wayne Clark from the World Class Manager team. And we're delighted to share with you, as part of this very special live stream, some of our latest research, insights, data, best practice, know-how. The plan is we try and keep this for around 30 to 40 minutes. If you've got some questions, please do feel free to shout out, jump in and ask some questions. We really definitely would love your questions. If anything that we can't answer during the session, then we'll come back to you following the session and answer some of those questions. So again, absolutely delighted to be here. We've got a very, very short 10 to 15 second intro, and then let's get into it. So if you've been a part of these, you'll know that the intros get better and better as time goes on. Now, this is totally live. This is not like some recorded live stream. You may be watching this actually on demand, so in which case it is recorded, but everything is live. I'm no professional presenter whatsoever. This is not my day job by any means. I'm the CEO of the World Class Manager organization. We specialize in developing large numbers of managers around the world, and we've now trained and developed around 250,000 managers in more than 50 countries around the world. We worked with more than 1,000 different CEOs, and our insights are picked up from observing the best practices, best managers in action. So if you rewind back in your career history all the way through to maybe when you were at the beginning, you know the effect that a great or a not so great manager can have on how it feels to be at work. We know that the relationship with our line manager has probably the most impact more than anything else when it comes to driving performance of publicly listed companies, of NGOs, of third sector organizations, of government organizations. It seems to be it's always the same thing. The role of the manager is absolutely key. So we developed an approach called World Class Manager, which we launched actually 9 years ago this month, and it's made its way also into book form, funnily enough, called How to Become a World Class Manager. So everything that we're sharing with you as part of these live stream series is real data based on best practice. This is not theory, it's not fluff, it's not management speak. Some of it might be, but hopefully not too much of it is. But this is the real deal stuff that managers really need based on everything that we've picked up from actually listening to managers. So what we're putting forward in all of our research, all of our work, all of our best practice is what we feel that managers need rather than what we feel that they need, if you understand what I mean. It's what they actually tell us that really matters to them. So you may be listening to this from a few different perspectives. You might be the CEO or a significant leader in an organization with a large group of people in a way that you're responsible for their performance and for their, I guess, their enjoyment of the workplace. If that's the case, then hopefully there's going to be a lot of value in here for you as part of this session. You might be listening to this as a HR professional, you're a specialist in human capital. And again, what we try to do as much as possible is to help you to build really robust business cases for change. Maybe there should be a shorter acronym, but it is. This is about helping you based on everything that we've come across to share with you and help you to build really solid business cases for change based on real world practice and also real world data. And also it might be that you're yet to become a manager. You're on your track to become a leader, to become more senior in an organization. If that's the case, why would you do that? Anyone who manages people knows this is like a crazy thing. I'm just joking, of course. And if you are on your journey to be a manager or a leader, then hopefully there's going to be lots of value in here for you. I wanted to do this today slightly different than the way we've done this before. We've got 3 key stats that I wanted to unpack with you and share with you some brief how-tos on. And then we've got 5 what we're calling headlines. I like to change the format of this. So much so that the team don't even know that I've changed the format. So they'll see it at the same time everyone else sees it. So we've got 3 things I wanted to share with you and 5 key headlines, all based on data. We took a data cut of 15,500 managers from our approach. And so this is like super, super fresh, 2025, freshly baked data that we're excited to share with you. So again, you might be listening to this from many different ways. My name is Wayne Clark. I'm the CEO of the World Class Manager organization, and it's my absolute delight to be in contact with you. So if you want to be in contact with me, please do. And also feel free to give us a connection on LinkedIn. So without further ado, let's crack on. Time is busy. Time is always a premium. So let's get started. And please, as we go through, if you've got any questions, please feel free to drop any questions into the chat. We're streaming this on YouTube and also Facebook and LinkedIn and also another live thing. So whichever chat function you've got access to, please feel free to drop that in and let's go. So let's get to it. Number one, when we talk about strategy, now, according to what we found, this is based on 15,500 managers that we surveyed this year. 42% of managers understand the strategy of the organization. So if you think about this, again, imagine you are, or you may be, you're the CEO or you're a leader of a large team, you're a HR professional, you're someone sort of charged with driving change in the organization. When it comes to articulating and sharing organizational strategy, we know based on interviewing 15,500 managers that only 42% would say that they confidently understand the strategy of the organization. Now, this could be for many reasons. It could be because the strategy has not been very well communicated or articulated, or the context isn't right. It could be, even in the extreme, that there is no coherent organizational strategy. If you are connected to me on LinkedIn, you will know, and I apologize ahead if we are connected, that I'm constantly polling and trying to get a read of and to triangulate in a way. That sounds nice, isn't it? Triangulate what we're finding out from our managers and what we can also find out from the LinkedIn connections and the community that we have. And this is an interesting one because when I've polled questions on this before, a number of people have said, what strategy? So when we ask the question, do you understand the strategy? People respond and say, what strategy? And there is a large proportion of people in a lot of organizations out there that don't have a coherent strategy or a plan or any sort of clear goal. So the key here, and I know this sounds unbelievably obvious, and we looked a number of years ago at why is it that most leadership team members of most organizations tend to feel clearer than everybody else in the organization about what the strategy or the goal of the company is. Is it because they're smarter? Is it because they wear better suits? Is it because they have higher IQ or dance better or smell better? No, of course not. There's none of those variables. I don't know about the smelling and dancing one, but there is nothing here that tells us why they should understand it better than other people. Of course, the reason why they do is because they often spend more time than the average person listening, thinking, discussing, going away to nice hotels with nice coffee for a few days with the leadership team. They emerge with a shared consensus of what the goal of the organization is. They understand the strategy. They get it. They've just spent more time than everybody else, usually, talking about it. And we know it would be weird if I walked down the corridor and said to, I've got a couple of my colleagues on the line, let's pick Rose. If I walked down the corridor and said, hey, Rose, fancy getting a sandwich today and talking about the strategy of the organization and where our team fits? No, thanks, Wayne. Maybe Rose would. But I suspect most people would probably say this is a weird conversation. The thing about it is it's the exact conversation that leadership team members have on a regular basis. So the answer to this, and it sounds so unbelievably simple, and it is disgustingly simple, is to try and create as many relevant, useful, practical conversations that people can have, peer-to-peer, manager to manager, manager to team. Let's empower the managers, inform the managers, give them all the stuff that they need to try and have as close a conversation as the CEO would have with the CFO and the CMO and the CHRO and the CIO and all the other CEOs. Because this is the exact conversation that leadership team members spend a large proportion of their time having or thinking about, and we're often not giving managers an opportunity to do it. We're not equipping them to do it, and we're not helping them to have these conversations with their teams. Now, this is like a super rapid munch and crunch down into a couple of minutes here to try and get this across, but really it is that simple. The challenge is it takes a lot of work, and it takes a long period of time, probably if you're in a complex organization, to affect that type of change. But the essence is always the same. And again, please feel free to connect with us. We can share with you lots more stuff on how we've seen other organizations do this, because we're a huge fan, which is what this is all about. As it's easier, as they say, to learn from someone else's pain rather probably than your own. And we've seen organizations go through this time and time and time again. And there are ways to shortcut this process. It doesn't need to be a long, drawn out, difficult thing. So that's stat number one, understanding the strategy. 42% of managers told us they do not they do understand the strategy, which means 58% really do not. So second one, and this for me was like, of all of the statistics that we pulled out this year, this for me was a mind-blowing one, because 52% of managers told us that they identify as a driver of change. Now, I'm sure you've been party to many leadership discussions, senior discussions in the organization where people talk about change. We need to drive change. We've got a new strategy, a new plan, a new set of goals, and new objectives. The shareholder wants market growth plus X%. We've got to deliver more for our patients. If you're a healthcare organization, if you're a housing organization, you've got to do more for the residents, and so on and so on. We all serve somebody. And what we do as a leader and a leadership team, we articulate and define and clarify what the goal is. And we think, right, we've got it. Let's say number one, we've nailed it. Everyone understands the strategy. Then who do we rely on? We rely now on often a community of people. Let's call them managers. They could be team leaders. They could be shift supervisors. They could be line managers, whichever way we term it. But these are people that probably have a network effect, that have a disproportionate impact in terms of culture, communication, messaging, than probably anybody else in the organization. We go to that community of managers, team leaders, supervisors, because they're going to play a heavily influential role in distributing the message, driving the change, reinforcing the behavior, and so on and so on. When we've surveyed the managers and we ask all of these managers what percentage of you actually identify as a driver of change in your organization, 52% said that they do. Now, this horrified me because, again, I think back over the years, I began my career at Deloitte. I spent 10 or so years in professional service firms and then run the Global Growth Institute, now our organization, for the last 13, 14 years. When we think back on my time in corporate, of how many failed starts there were in different organizations. And, you've got half the percentage or half the population of the managers who just do not feel like they are a driver of change. So why is that the case? Well, often we know that this has a lot to do with how people feel, in a way, looked over when it comes to looking at talent. Now, we know that the quality of one-to-ones, we call them goal-setting conversations, we call them inspiring appraisal conversations, they could even be difficult conversations. The quality of one-to-ones in many organizations is lacking. And again, what support do we give managers to have those conversations? If you pulled out a random group of managers in an organization and said, right, talk to me about what's the quality like of the conversation that you have with somebody who's more senior, we find this even we find this at board level, right? So, if I talk to the CMO or the CIO and say, right, what's the conversation quality like between you and your CEO on a regular basis in terms of your goals, objectives, and so on? And they'll sort of smirk. The further we go down the organization, often by grade, the more ludicrous the question becomes. If we're in a sort of blue collar environment and I'm asking shop floor workers in many of the organizations that we've come across, what's the quality of these conversations like? They'll sort of look at you as if to say, what are you talking about? So how can you possibly be expected to be a driver of change when you're so in the dark, you're so disconnected from what the action is and your understanding of it? And again, this is very much linked with the first point around the strategy. What we probably want is we want 100% of managers fired up, acting as drivers of change that are going to own the change. They're going to own the strategy. They're going to own the future direction of the organization, and be an active participant in pushing that through all the way through to success and realization, right? Maybe I'm sounding like a utopian view here, but the idea is that we probably want as many managers as possible. And we understand right now that about 52% of managers see themselves as a driver of change. So my hope is when it comes to this being a useful set of statistics for you, or when it comes to helping you to build a robust business case for change, I think it would be worth some investigation. It would be worth taking a subset of your managers and finding out how do they feel about being a driver of change. And if they don't see themselves as a driver of change, why not? We can't answer for you why not, but we definitely know that a large percentage of managers do not see themselves as a driver of change. So key stat number 3, and this again for us was a fascinating one. And it's 47% of managers fear giving feedback. And this wasn't giving like any old feedback. This is fear about giving like all feedback. And this was mind-blowing again for us, because we come across many different organizations who talk a lot about the importance of good quality one-to-ones, line manager conversations, difficult conversations, and so on. But we found that from the manager's perspective, many managers do feel very fearful about offering any sort of feedback. When we dug into this in a bit more detail, it tended to be that the bit that really scared managers the most was any conversation that kind of felt like it was about behavior. And this was an area where we thought, well, this is like a massive opportunity for support. So if you are a management consultant or a coach, or you're giving leadership development advice, I think here's a huge opportunity based on everything that we constantly see, is that managers definitely need more support. They need more guidance. They need more coaching. They need more help in how to have difficult conversations or to offer basic feedback. And I think this is important, that the organization can help to remove fear. We work with an organization, actually I'm an ambassador for an organization called Safe Places to Work, led by some brilliant guys in UAE and also in Saudi Arabia by Salient. And this business focus on how do they remove fear from the workplace. So the guy, I want to give a shout out to Rory if he's watching, but him and his team are doing an exceptional job of looking at how do they remove fear from the workplace. And this is all about that. How do we make sure that people feel safe enough to have these type of important conversations? Because right now, based on what we found, they don't. So again, we can't answer what the 53% feel, but maybe you can. So maybe it's worth conducting some further investigation here to look at some of these. So these are the 3 top stats as we wanted to share based on everything that we sort of constantly see and are coming across this year. And next up, I've got 5, what I call the 5 key headlines. Let's roll the VT. Now that's dramatic, isn't it? Let's roll the headlines. There we go. So this is the new section of the show where we've got 5 headlines. As I said, this is not like a recorded session. Everything is live. So let's see how we get on with this one. But 5 key headlines that I wanted to share with you based on, again, the fresh, super fresh data. My hope is that you can use this in a really smart way to either build a business case for change, drive change, or even you might want to show this recording to some of those managers who you suspect could do a better job of some of this. And maybe there's some value in here that this can act as a bit of a free training session for managers. So key headline number 1. And this is fascinating for us, that what we've looked at is 38% of managers say that they feel culture actually beats pay. So when it comes to pay rises in the organization, people aren't saying, actually, I'd rather trade off. No, thank you very much. I don't want a pay rise. But if the culture could be better, that would make me really happy. Of course, it's not the case. But what we do know is that managers say that culture is so important. And actually, when it comes to looking at what makes the big difference to how people feel about being at work, we know it's culture. When we talk about culture, and culture can often be quite an ethereal, odd thing to try and put your hands on. And I've seen some good definitions over the years. People talk about how it feels around here. And I think as soft as that sounds, it's absolutely true, isn't it? You know, you can go into a different team. Actually, even in the same building, you can turn the corner and go to another department and it feels different. You work on the same floor, you work for the same brand or company, you're serving the same sort of people, but that team feels different. Why? Well, of course, surprise, surprise, it's often to do with the manager. You know, again, we know that you can probably work in theory, like the worst company in the world, according to the survey data, but have an awesome manager and you will probably enjoy work. Conversely, you can work for, in theory, the best company ever. And we've met some people who've worked for some exceptional brands of organizations, absolutely hated it, not because the company was bad, but because their experience with the manager wasn't very good either. So when we look at this, we know that this is, of course, all related to the role of the manager and how do managers bring to life the culture? How do managers own culture? And here's a tip that I like to sort of try and get managers to follow. Many don't because they fear doing it. But I think it would be worth for managers to have an interesting debate or conversation, a serious conversation with the CEO or a senior member of the organization about what the culture actually is and what their perception of it is. The challenge we found is any organization, let's say you've got 1,000 people. Let's make it simpler. You've got 100 people. In an organization of 100 people, we definitely know then, you know, this is all to do with how people feel about being there, right? So a question in from Ian. Yeah, actually, that's a fascinating point, Ian. It's a great question here from Ian Hunter. There were huge packages offered by Meta to join Meta for the world's best AI developers, and people were refusing it. And actually, I heard that there was even more than 100 million. They were offering 200-300 million to people with all sorts of different incentives in the package, but also not great. So also, as it would probably make sense, pay doesn't also retain, or pay alone doesn't retain. So we know that this has a heavy thing to do with the culture. Now, why might this be the case? And again, it's probably worth investigating this in your own organizations, but we know that pay alone, 31% of managers said actually not. It's not pay at all that retains talent in the organization. We know it's to do with this more ethereal thing of culture. When we drill into what that means in practice, it's probably the small number of people that you interact with on a regular basis, and heavily dictated by the quality of the relationships with senior people. So if you were to put on, like, if this was, I don't know, Ian, but if you were to put on like Ian Cam, right, and you're going to follow, let's not use Ian because maybe it's a bad example. Maybe he's the opposite of this. But let's pick Tom. You put on Tom Cam and you follow Tom around the office for like 5 days, like a week in the life of Tom's world. The number of people that most people interact with on a regular basis is quite small. It's quite rare to go outside of your network, your ordinary group of people that you interact with at work, and regularly find new people to connect with and talk to. Most people probably don't do that. So here's the interesting thing. If in your world, it feels like the organization's getting better, it feels like the culture's getting better, then as far as you're concerned, the culture's getting better. It's completely subjective. Actually, it's 100% subjective, I would argue. That culture is 100% subjective. So trying to figure out in my local team of 10, 15, 20, 50 people, how we can make it better is actually probably what we need to do and what we need to focus on. And maybe we need support from someone senior to really champion that as well. This one was interesting to me because we work with quite a lot of search firms and recruitment companies, and I'm not throwing shade here on recruitment companies because I don't think it's their issue, partly their issue, and maybe partly from the recruitment process inside the organization. But it seems that managers are very lukewarm on recruitment. 44% of managers, based on the managers we've spoken to, were satisfied about and we're not talking like over the moon. We're talking satisfied with the process that they went through in terms of being recruited into the organization. And here's a fascinating thing, because for years, I mean, my job, my role, my expertise, if you put it that way, evolved from employee engagement. I was working in employee engagement work for years, which of course has evolved into what we call now the modern employee experience focus. When we think about the employee experience, where does it begin? Of course, it begins at your very first interview, probably not even with the organization. You know, I may have a series of interviews or conversations with exec search people, with search teams, with recruitment companies, way before I even interact with the organization itself. And here is often where organizations miss a massive trick, because they think what they've done is outsource the recruitment process in a smart way, which they probably have commercially. What it does culturally is it can make a huge dent and damage how it feels to work in the organization. I won't say who this is, but it is a big bank that, maybe not narrowed it down now, but it's a big bank that I spent quite a lot of time with. And at this big bank, big global bank, I got an opportunity to look at the leaver data. And what we found was about 50% of staff who left the organization, so they were losing not tens of thousands, they were losing into the low 10,000 number of people were leaving the organization every year. And what we found is half of those people, actually it was 6,500 people, cited career growth and development as the number one reason why they left the organization. What we then did is we look a sharper view of saying, right, where does that drop off? And what we were finding were there seemed to be a lot of people who were leaving sub 3 months. They weren't even making it to 90 days before they decided to leave. Then what we decided to do was get a bit further in and look at how do they get recruited into this company. Then I managed to meet the recruitment company who had been outsourced to, and obviously they were doing an epic job of finding thousands of people for this organization. And what happened were the problems that they were talking about, they thought were the bank's issue. The bank thought it was the recruitment company's issue, and it was just falling between the cracks. Problem is, in those 3 months, I go through this experience and say, you know what, I'm talented. I'm going to try and sell my talent, my skills, and my experience to the highest bidder. I'm out, like Dragon's Den, Shark Tank. I'm out of here. I don't want to stay. And this is what was happening. So everyone thought it was somebody else's problem, but actually no one was dealing with the problem. The person who experienced the problem, of course, with the new hire, and the new hires generally tended to vote with their feet and said, I'm out of here. Or even worse, what they would do is they would stay and they would tell other people, as we found, that it's not great here, but actually you do a year or two here and you can probably go somewhere else because it's good on your CV. This is what no employer wants at all. So again, lukewarm on recruitment. And I think this is another fascinating area of investigation. Often we find that many senior people have become quite disconnected, not because they intentionally set out to become disconnected, but because life happens, they're busy, and they don't understand the intricacy anymore of what happens in the recruitment process, which may be damaging how it feels to work in the organization. And of course, why is all of this important? Well, because this starts to damage and dent performance, output, and the people that we're ultimately designed to serve. This was another alarming one. So about 50% of managers that we surveyed said that they either felt burnt out or they want out. And this was largely to do with the perception of the development opportunities on offer. I'm not going to try and get on my soapbox on this one because I can spend a long time on my soapbox talking about this. But this is a huge issue, right? Everywhere that we go. And I think this is like one of the simplest and cheapest issues to fix in many organizations. We've come across charitable organizations. Actually, we just started supporting another huge charity, actually. And this is fascinating because they have like no money to develop people, none, no budget, nothing. But they've got people there who feel developed, they feel grown, they feel like they're being made to be worth more in the marketplace, and they've got no budget. We've worked with other organizations that have phenomenal budgets, you know, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of pounds to spend on developing people, but have this constant issue when it comes to feeling like people aren't given opportunities for promotion or they're not given opportunities for development. We know it's not to do with the amount of money on offer. We know it's to do with who? Largely us as managers and as leaders. And then if we drill into that even further, it goes into the quality of the conversation, the regularity of the conversation that we have with managers, with our team, on a regular basis. So we know that that's got a large part to do with it. The burnout part is often to do, of course, with workload, how we manage workloads. And this is something as a real challenge. There's no way to escape this. I'm an economist by training, so I like the numbers. But if you really look at I'll not go off on a tangent here, but if you look at we are at a 40-year inflation adjusted highest ever price of gold in human history, right? This is telling us something about the economy. It's telling something about inflation. If inflation keeps running as it is, then we know that we're having to work harder because everything costs more and everything just feels more difficult. We're not being paid more at the same rate as inflation. And therefore, of course, the challenges on the corporation, on the organization is always there, which means that the pressure always gets shifted through the organization. Where does it get shifted to? Us, managers. You know, frontline leaders in organizations is often where we feel this pressure because we're constantly being asked to do more. You know, at any point, I would argue, I'm sure that your CEO, or maybe you, if you are the CEO, I'm sure you didn't go to your team over the last year and say, hey guys, next year the plan is just chill out. Just chill out, relax, take it easy. You're working way too hard. This is never the case. All organizations want more. Everyone wants more from the manager. And of course, we're often asking much more of the manager and of the team, maybe when we're not thinking about what we can best do to support it. There is no easy fix. There is no easy answer. The workload isn't going to get less. The encroachment of AI into our world is not going to get less. All we can probably do is take another closer look, another closer investigation, and start to think, what can we do to best support people in these challenging times, which is not challenging time, is it? Because it's not like a challenging time suggests that it's going to be a not challenging time in the future. It's going to be challenging times forever. We're in challenge. That's it. Total challenge forever. And then the last one, which is fascinating to me, was flexible isn't a flex. I'm trying to use like cool urban language here. Flexible isn't a flex, right? Because we often think that offering flexibility in the workplace or for employment seems to be a really cool thing to do. And it seems to be like it would be some sort of benefit. 0% of managers told us it's a benefit. Not interested. It's not something that makes me say, oh, wow, that looks like a great company to work for because they offer flexible working. It's now seen as absolute table stakes. So this isn't something as a benefit. So I do think this warrants another interesting investigation into what I would call, I wish I had a skip for this moment. This is what I would call the reality check, right? Because in the reality check moment, I think we need to relook at what's actually happening. And is reality bearing out what we think it is? Often, like we often operate in echo chambers on social media, we can often be guilty of operating, certainly leaders can, in echo chambers inside organizations. There's another big company that we work with, and I was trying to give them feedback on this. I wasn't fearful of giving the feedback, but they didn't take the feedback very well. But the feedback was, if you look at their LinkedIn posts, right, they post up something on LinkedIn, and if you go and look at the comments, it's all of the employees of the company who are saying how fantastic and wonderful they are. I've never seen any one of their clients commenting. I've never seen anyone of the public saying this is fascinating. And they think that they're getting great traction on social media because they've got a few hundred people who comment. The people who comment all work in the organization. So again, this is like, it's easy to fall into this trap, certainly in a larger company, that you believe your own hype, drink your own Kool-Aid, and listen to your own stories a bit too much. So I think rechecking what reality is and saying, all right, we're in 2025 September. what do people want right now? This was the basis of all of our work. And if I travel back 13 years ago, we developed our world-class manager program based on trying to find out what managers actually need, not what we think they should have or we think they should do, what they actually need. Once we give them what they actually need, then asking something more of somebody is probably a lot easier based on that. So I'm going to leave it there in terms of the stats and the stuff, because I can talk like forever, and I wanted to provide a few moments here that we can hopefully get into some questions here. So if we do have any questions, do feel free to jump in. I'll hang out for a while and see if we get any questions in. And then as we go through the rest of the month, we've got another live stream on the 25th of September. We're going to be interviewing a very, very special man called Mr. Lorenzo Chan, who's the CEO of Pioneer Insurance, the largest insurer in the Philippines. So we're delighted to have Mr. Lorenzo Chan Jr. actually with us. And he's written a fascinating book called Covering Nane. So we look forward to featuring him on the live stream later this month. But yeah, if there are any questions, do feel free to send them through. If not, then we wish you a fantastic rest of the day. This is going to be available for people on the streams on demand. So if you've not caught this live in the session, then please feel free to catch this on the recorded version where you'll be watching that. A huge thank you for registering and being part of this very special live stream as far as we're concerned with this data. And I hope what we've done is given you some really good food for thought, some ideas, some tips, some tools perhaps, and helped you to build what we would consider to be, like a really robust case for change. So I'm not going to end there because there is a question coming in. So thank you very much. Question from LinkedIn. Do you have any quick fixes to improve company culture? Okay, well, yes. There are many quick fixes. What would be the quickest fix to improve company culture? I would suggest probably spending like 30 days. I would pick 30-day period. I would pick a number of people at random across the organization. Now, if you've got a large organization, doesn't matter. You want a sort of realistic enough sample, but trying to pick a number of people across the organization and just trying to get a sense of what they feel the culture is right now. Organizations steam into this idea that we're going to fix or change or improve or evolve organizational culture without getting a sense of the fact that, again, if there are 100 people, you've got 100 really valid views of what the culture is. Every single person's view is totally valid. And as far as they're concerned, it's the correct view of what the culture is. So I think the first step as a quick fix is to try and get a read on what people believe the culture of the organization actually is, and not to be deterred by, you get some very loud individuals and very influential individuals who have a disproportionate impact on the view of the culture when it might not actually be true. So I think a reality check moment is absolutely key. So we're going to leave it there. Oh, sorry, we've got another question. It's great. Anna O'Sullivan, in your view, what does support for managers look like? Is it from the CEO or more from building a strong leadership team environment? This relates to leaders feeling a very or heavy workload and demand and stretched. That's brilliant, Anna. Thank you so much. And as you can see, this is like live. I'm reading this at the same time that everyone else sees this. I mean, I think, Anna, based on this, the support for managers comes from a couple of places. I think there has to be CEO or another significant leader that people do like, know, and trust. Having a CEO just because they're the CEO can be meaningless, and it depends what type of CEO they are. There are some CEOs that you'd say to them, you know what, you should get out more. You should go and talk to people more because you're like really good. You're personable. People like you. There are some CEOs you come across and you think you're better off in your office. It sounds really bad to say it, but they are. They just hack people off. They annoy people. They say the wrong things at the wrong times, and you probably could do without that sort of air cover. But there are, if assuming, Anna, you've got a decent CEO or you are a decent CEO, I think getting the CEO visibly out there, meeting as many managers as possible, and I think relating to the challenges that the managers face can go a huge way to having people feel empathized with and understood. So I think there needs to be senior level support. What they can't do is the more heavy lifting element, which is sort of, in a world, I don't like the word training, but there's an element of training or development for managers, which is key. And the way that I would suggest that it happens, and it's along the same lines of how we developed our entire approach, right? is to look at what already works well. I guarantee in an organization of, let's say you've got 100 people and you've got 10 managers. In an organization where you've got 10 managers, you will have one or two of those 10 managers who are exceptional. Wish everybody could be like Mary or everyone could be like Kevin. If they were just like them, then the world would be a great place because they do excellent stuff. Their team respond really well to them. You can see that their team have a better time. The quality of the one-to-ones are better and so on. So there are going to be a number of managers in the organization who are brilliant. And I would suggest it's a really good idea to learn from what they do. And I would feature that as part of your management development approach. Bringing in external, and I'm not trying to kill our own business because this is what we do. We are an external organization to many companies. Bringing in an external organization with a program often doesn't work so well unless it's slightly tailored or if it's well understood, because it's important that we understand the real challenges that managers face, number one, and number two, understand what best practice already looks like. Sorry, long answer to your question. The reason why the number 2 point is so important is because the best practices were born out of that culture. They were like hard-won learnings, right? So if you think you go into a company and it takes you 12 to 24 months to really start to figure out how the culture is here, and actually politically it's effective if I do things in that way, X, Y, Z. Actually over there it makes more sense to do it Y, X, Z, because I understand how the politics works over there. There was all of these tacit learnings that are like gold that you can only get through experience of the organization. And I think many organizations discard all of that stuff in the pursuit of trying to find out what another top flight organization are doing. Interesting stuff can be applied, but I think it's much more valuable to get the best practice from what happens internally as well. So long answer, excuse me, long answer to the question, but I think it's a really important way to look at it. So we're going to end the stream here. A thank you, a huge thank you to everyone who's been involved in the session. For those of you who've signed up for the live. Then we're going to feature a guy called Mr. Lorenzo Chan, who's the CEO of Pioneer Insurance, and they are the largest insurance company in the Philippines. We hope today's been valuable for you, and we look forward to seeing you on another live stream very soon. See you.